Is with the unit, and we're visiting in the home of Mr. and Mrs. J. Homer Solomon on, I guess we'll call it the Mayfield Highway. And we're not too terribly far from Leon Riley, who was on not long ago.
That's right.
And it's a real pleasure to be with you, J. Homer. I've don't believe I've been in your house before, but I've done business with you for a long, long time.
Sure have.
Could you tell us your age?
73.
And you were born in Marshall County?
Right.
Could you tell us your dad's name?
James Dalton Solomon.
And your mother?
Ruby Solomon.
All right. Now, do you know, perhaps for the benefit of the genealogist, any of your grandparents? You know, we take this back as far as we can. Yeah. If you can go back to England or wherever, that'd be fine. But if you know just one more group, well, go ahead and give us that.
Well, on my mother's side, her father was A.N. Vasseur.
Mm-hmm.
They call it Vasseur here.
Mm-hmm. French name, wasn't
right.
it? Yeah.
And he was born in Paris, France. And I don't remember exactly the time that he came over here, but and then he, of course, married a Beard, and then I think there's about 8 children born, and my mother was one in the first group of children, about 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandmother died, and my grandfather married her sister. And then there was 7 more children born.
So altogether, we really had a large family, didn't we?
15 children. That's in the Vasseur family.
You know, that was fairly typical, though, of that generation and an earlier group. I read stories of famous people. I believe John Wesley was one of about 15 or so.
Yeah. My mother was second child in the first marriage.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's quite an interesting story. And your father was he born in America?
Yes.
Yeah. And what time did the family come to Marshall County? Do you have any idea?
I think, well, my grandfather on the Solomon side was born in Trigg County. And I think that's where my father was born, in Trigg County. And then, of course, in his early years, well, then he came on over into Marshall County.
Well, where did you go to school?
At the University of Stall.
Stall. Now, I've heard that name
Yeah.
before. It was one of the one-room schools.
Right.
That's great. You may be one of the few people I've talked to, I guess you are, that actually went to school there. Now, was that down in the neighborhood of Palma and that?
Just as you go over the parkway, it was just a little piece past that.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember where the Stalls lived,
Mm-hmm.
it was on a little road just, which was a road, which is back of the Highway 68 there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just a one-room school.
Well, that, of course, puts you in a class of a lot of very famous people. In that generation, just about everybody went to a one-room school.
Right.
And in fact, for many, many years after that. Do you recall any of your teachers?
I think Otis Gillum was my first teacher.
I've heard that name. In fact, Jody Gillum Dunn was a daughter.
Right.
And John, who was a labor leader around here for a number of years,
Right.
was another child, and I don't remember how many children he had. There was Julia, though, was a music major at Murray State.
Yeah, I think so.
And married, well, I shouldn't have brought it up. I know his name. He's in the hospital in Paducah now, or in the nursing home there. Collier.
Yeah.
Well, so Otis Gillum, was he a pretty tough character? Or did he make you walk the chalk?
Yeah, he kind of made us kind of walk the chalk. That's right.
The teachers were seeming like all that way back then. You didn't sass them.
No, you didn't.
And I know I had a few paddlings. Now I wouldn't want to ask you if you ever.
Well, I think I had one or two.
What did you like best about school?
Well, I kind of like. Of course, I played basketball in the grade school,
Mhm.
and high school, and
How tall are you anyway?
about 6'4".
6'4". I know we'll get to it a little later, but now you played for the Thoroughbreds at Murray State.
Yes.
So you played some basketball there, and no doubt they played all kinds of one-room school games like Wolf over the River.
Right. Softball, basketball, Andy over. And
We
all
played
that.
something we called town ball. It's about like baseball, except if I remember right, you could cross them out by throwing the ball in front of them as they
Yeah.
ran along.
Crack the whip.
Yeah. Oh boy, I tell you, I've had some bruises over that.
That's you get it if you on
When
the.
you're
If you're on
small,
the
you
last
got
one.
on the tail, the
That's
popper
right.
they call it, and they'd really let you have it. And of course, later we had spelling bees, pie suppers.
That's right. You always had them in these small schools.
Did you ever get struck on anybody? Now, they won't know what we're talking about except people who grew up around here, probably. We use that term to mean we were in love with a girl.
That's right.
7 or 8 years old.
I don't know. I think I was played basketball and softball and all like that. And of course, back then, we didn't have a car,
There
so
wasn't
we'd
a
go to
whole
pie
lot you
suppers
could do.
and school activities and all those things.
Yeah.
And some other teachers might mention that some that you know, and that's Miranda Young, Earl Walker, Sylvia Boyd.
Sylvia Boyd.
Yeah, I
You
wanted to
know,
mention her.
I had one of the best interviews out of Sylvia Boyd. People still talk about that.
Yeah, I heard it. She's real good.
She was good, wasn't she?
Well, I kind of, she'll kind of want to skin my head for telling you this.
Oh, go ahead.
I always accuse her of keeping me in after school because she was kind of struck on my oldest brother.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't ask you how many children there were in your family, but you had an older brother.
Oh, yeah. There was 6 of us children.
Well, good. Well, now your head may get skinned over that.
Well, I figured that because I tell everybody there that she whipped me a lot. She kept me in school, and I think she was doing that because she was kind of wanted to date my oldest brother.
Yeah. Okay, you got through elementary school, and then did you go to Benton High, or where did you?
Went 2 years at Sharp,
2 years at Sharp.
and then we moved to Benton,
Mhm.
and I went 2 years to graduate from Benton.
Were they known as the Green Devils way back then?
No, it was after that.
I know, I believe I talked to Woodrow Hill one time, and he said they had been something else, and then they named them about time he was playing there, changed the name to Green Devils. And some before that had red uniforms.
Right.
Was I guess Homer was the state champion coach's name?
Homer Holland.
Homer Holland wasn't there when you were there.
No.
Right. I presume then that you played basketball in high school, certainly,
Right.
and moved to Benton and kept playing there. What year did you graduate from high school?
1931.
Well, that was kind of a rough time to get out, wasn't it? The Depression was just coming on very hard and heavy.
Sure was.
So you went to Murray State.
After I got out of high school in May, then I started right in school over Murray.
Well, you got to attend under one of the all-time favored coaches over there. Was that Carlisle Cutchin then?
Right.
And Mr. Cutchin was a mighty fine fellow. It seemed to
Sure was. And
he,
John
Miller, was he there?
He was a freshman coach.
Uh-huh. Now back then you couldn't play varsity ball as a freshman in those days. Could
No.
you? Had to be on the freshman team. Well, that was true when I was in school. I started in the fall of '40. That was Joe Fulks' beginning year.
Right.
He and Red Metcalf and Herbert Hurley and quite a number of pretty good players started that year.
Sure were.
And it seemed to me like their freshman team was unbeaten, although I can't say that
I
absolutely.
know they had a good team.
All right, you were graduated then. Did you have to stop and go to work, and like many of them did back then, or were...
I went about 2 years straight over Murray, and my dad got sick, and I had to quit school, and then I didn't go back to school over Murray until I got out of the service. I went back in 1946 after I got out of service.
Okay, well, what branch of service were you in?
Field artillery,
Had you married by the time you went into service?
yes. Married February 8th, 1936.
And your wife is whom?
Berta Darnell.
Now, where did you meet her?
I guess around Benton High School. She was going to
She went
school.
to Benton High School
Yes.
also, and grew up in maybe this neighborhood, along in here,
Right,
right on out the road.
second door from here.
Well, she's right at home, isn't
That's
she?
right.
Well, that's great. Well, you started to Benton, and so you found your love life there. Was it love at first sight, or did you?
Well, it's kind of hard to say.
Hard to remember all those things.
Well, she
exactly.
could tell you some stories about that. I probably shouldn't get into that.
Okay. Well, we don't want anything that would be embarrassing. But you went to service. You went into field artillery. Where did you train?
Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
I've been to that place. And then did you have to go overseas?
Went overseas, and when I was about, let's see, I had 17 weeks of basic training at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and left there, and then I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, had a year of combat training, and then went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. From Fort Sill, Oklahoma, then I went overseas.
Mm-hmm. Which theater, Europe or the
Europe.
Pacific? Yeah, you went to Europe. Did you have to go in the North African campaign, or was
No.
it after D-Day? Or
No, I spent all my time in Germany,
Mhm.
and I was at Bitburg, Germany, when the war ended.
Now that's where the president went recently to
Right.
put a wreath on some of the soldiers' graves.
That's right.
Wasn't it? Remember a little bit of fuss about that. You didn't happen to run into Shelby McCallum anywhere over there, did you?
No, I never did find him.
Well, when I first became acquainted with you, you and Shelby were partners. How did that come about?
Well,
You came home from the war and you needed a job, I guess. So.
Well, I tell you, I started in the insurance business in November 1946, and then, well, I was licensed for a State Farm agent in '46,
Mhm.
and then I needed a job, so I got on this veterans teaching program that they had started. So I was working on that, and then just kind of playing around with the insurance business. And of course, Shelby was operating theaters at night, and so we kind of got together where they could be there during the day, and while I was away. So we were in the insurance business for a while, up until 1951, I guess it was, and we built a drive-in theater over at Russellville, Kentucky.
I remember when he had Russellville, Hopkinsville, and Calvert,
Right.
plus managed the Benton theater.
Right. So this theater over at Russellville, then Shelby went over there to Shelby and his first wife, Betty,
Mm-hmm.
to operate the theater. Then we just kind of dissolved their little partnership, and so he operated the theater, and then I just stayed in the insurance business.
Did you start off with State Farm like you are now?
Yes,
So you've been with them all the way.
since November 1946.
You must be one of their older agents.
Well,
Been with them. I don't know if that's a record or anything, but
well, we have some agents that's been with them long and I have, but I guess in the state of Kentucky, I'm one of the oldest agents to have.
Yeah.
But then that veteran program was over, I think, in 1952, and then I went full-time with State Farm, and been with them ever since.
But do you have any children?
One,
And that's Spencer.
Spencer.
I know Spencer went to Murray State. I
Right.
remember that well. Where is he now?
He's been here for about the last 6 months because he had some surgery,
Mhm.
but he's
I know he worked out of Memphis a while.
yeah, he worked in Memphis, and but now I think he's going to be working in Texas. That's what I understand.
Mm-hmm. He's in the process of transferring then
Right.
to Texas.
Right.
Well, it seems much of the economic activity in the country is going on in Texas now.
They say there's a lot.
I know in the top 10 markets in America, it might surprise a lot of people to know that 3 of them are in Texas. Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, and San Antonio is the 10th largest city in America.
Well, I guess that's right. Yeah.
So there's a lot going on, and oil doesn't hurt them, I suppose.
Well, I wouldn't think so.
He won't be going to Muleshoe, will he?
Well, I don't know where that place is. I don't know.
I've been through Muleshoe one time, and the name always intrigued me. Of course, they've got a lot of wild names. Uvalde, where John Nance Garner, the vice president, lived, was not very big a place, but it's an interesting little town. Well, tell us about the county as you remember it, and it's from your earliest days of memory. What's changed so much about it? Were you born in the Calvert City area?
Well, I was born just, about where just over the Parkway where the roasted chicken place is.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's where I was born, right on that farm.
I'd call that, and that's the reason you went to Stall, of
That's
course,
right.
I guess, is
Yeah.
because you were in that general area. Now, that part of the world has changed so much you wouldn't recognize it now.
Oh, that's for sure.
The
Yeah.
Purchase Parkway and I-24. And,
Right.
well, as a matter of fact, US 62, where it is now, is, to me, kind of a new road.
Of course, first I remember it, at Highway 62, or no, Highway 68. Of course, I remember when it was just a gravel road.
You remember when you had to take 62 and you wormed around and got back over to, what was the name of that little ferry? Was it Iuka or something
It was
like
Iuka, yeah.
that? And then after Kentucky Dam was built, a good little while before they ran the highway over the dam itself.
Right.
And I know that little ferry used to, the river fluctuated a lot, in height from flood stage to dry weather. And sometimes the water gets so low they couldn't cross.
That's right.
And then it gets so high you couldn't cross. And you just didn't know what to do about that particular area. And I have gone many times to US 60, drive all the way down almost to Paducah, and get on a road to go to Louisville.
That's right.
Or you had another choice. You could go back up to Egner's Ferry and go through Hopkinsville.
Yeah.
And go up that way. Neither way was real good, was it?
Not very good. Sure wasn't.
What did your father do?
We farm.
Nearly everybody, it could be said in those days, I guess, who were not merchants in the towns, were pretty much farmers. Are you a good tobacco suckerer?
I suckered my part, I think. We had, last year that we were on the farm, we had 6 acres of dark tobacco. You didn't spray, so there was a lot of suckering that
And
had to
worming.
be done. And worming, right. And I was glad to get rid of that.
Oh, I tell you what, that inspired me to go to college more than anything I ever did.
Right. Well, it was, well, one reason I started school was just right after I got out of high school because there wasn't anything to do. You couldn't get a job.
Mhm.
And so that's when I just went right out of high school into college.
But I take it that you didn't go off like my dad and some did to Detroit and get a job in the car plants.
No, sure didn't.
So you just stuck with Marshall County.
That's
Have you
right.
ever been sorry that you stayed around Marshall County?
Not one bit. Best place in the world to live.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. Did your wife ever worm any tobacco?
I don't much think so. I don't think they grew in tobacco.
Yeah. Well, I know her sister worked at the drugstore a long time, didn't she?
Right.
And made a many of a sundae and a chocolate malted and
That's
what
right.
have you, so she didn't have to worry about suckering tobacco.
That's right.
Well, what about some of your high school teachers? Do you remember any of them?
Well, let's see. I had Miss Addie Fawn. I think about everybody had her sometime or other. And Matt Spartman. He was the basketball coach.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember
Ted Chambers.
one of the funniest men that I've ever met was a guy. I went with Rayburn Watkins to a Benton High reunion. It seems to me it was the class of 38, 39, 40. 3 classes met together. And if everybody was to stand up and tell about themselves and any funny stories they could remember. So this fellow stood up and he says, "My name is Zudu Fields." Said, the 3 happiest years of my life were the 3 years that I spent in the senior class at Benton High School. Well, of course, everybody started laughing. He said, "It's true." Said, "I had Addie Fawn for 3 years in English." Oh, they just roared.
That's right.
He had a lot of funny stories, but I'll never forget that one that he told. So you're right. People mention Addie Fawn. I guess some of them didn't like her so well then, but later they found out she was a very good English teacher.
Yeah, she taught down at Sharp before she came to Benton.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, there was a lot of people over a period of years went to school to her.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, that's some great people came out of her teaching, and of course Ray Watkins has done pretty well for himself.
Well, I think so.
Probably.
Sure has.
Associated Industries of Kentucky and so forth. Well, what was Benton like when you first came here? Did you tell us about some of the stores around the square? Now, where you were, where you are now, what was along in there? Anything?
Well, we'll start where the Bank of Benton is. That was, Mr. White had a mill there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was an old tin shop, and J.D. Gamble had a garage there, and Jamie Griffith had that brick building there, which now is part of Bank of Benton. And then, of course, there was Jamie Griffith, before he built that building, well, then he had along where my office is, he had a building there that burned. And then there was the old fruit stand, which I guess you remember that, next to the
Some way
National Store
I
building.
don't remember that. Now,
There where Puckett's jewelry store is, there was an old fruit stand.
the National Store, was that Crawford Ferguson?
That's right.
Yeah.
And
I remember that. And it seems to me there was a service station across the street on the
just
corner.
across the street, there was the Standard Oil Station. And then, well, before that, there was a hardware store there. And then there was a Standard Oil Station. And then, of course, well, it used to be just gravel streets through Benton. And then, of course, as you go around the square,
I know the Bank of Marshall County was on the corner there,
Right.
just across. What is that? 12th? Yeah, 11th.
11th Street.
Yeah, 11th Street.
And then, of course, then, let's see, there's,
Nelson's was about where it is, I guess, wasn't it?
yeah, it's about the same place. But then there was a J.C. Hauser store. It was there. And there was another department store there. I can't think of their name now. And then, of course, you go on down the street a little bit further. Then, of course, the Bank of Benton, the old Bank of Benton, where John Clay Levitt's office is now.
Before they moved.
And then there used to be a theater along about where Morgan's store is.
Now that I don't remember.
There was a theater there, and I think it burned.
Was there a drugstore on the end?
There was a drugstore on the corner down there.
Raymond Vick was there when
Raymond Vick. But right this side of there used to be a restaurant. That's a long time ago. And then, of course, going across the street, and there was Morgan and Heath store. And about the next place on down was the post office. And
I have a picture of that.
Yeah. And of course, you start back up the other side. Then there was J.D. Peterson's store.
Yes.
And Philbeck, Fred Philbeck, his funeral home was there. And then later, of course, he moved over to where Philbeck.
Where they are now.
Yeah.
And was the Benton Theater next door to that?
Right. Sure was.
That's what I was
And
thinking.
Shelby started operating that.
That is 39, I believe.
About 30 to 39, yeah.
Well, that brings around. Of course, the Methodist Church has always been where it is today. But you know, 30 minutes goes by in a terrible hurry. Do you have some kind of a funny story like Leon Riley gave us there that you might tell?
Sylvia Boyd's going to whip me, I think.
Yeah.
Until she hears what I told her.
Yeah.
No, I tell you, of course, Benton has made a lot of changes in the last few years. And it's a pretty nice little town, too, real. Lots of traffic. I guess there's 25,000, 30,000 cars come through Benton every day.
I wouldn't doubt it. Well, you've been a good interview, and I appreciate it very much. Glad you let me come and visit with you. And we will remind our audience that we've been visiting in the home of Mr. and Mrs. J. Homer Solomon on the Mayfield Highway, and we return you now to our studio.